Sides do not seem close at all. Um, I'm honestly just really, really mad as a fan. This is not where we want to be. Obviously, we want a whole 162 games, but if we don't get a deal by Monday, that won't happen. And
Welcome to episode 44 of Everything Sports with Aman and Evan. I'm your host, Aman Kyrie,
I'm your co-host, Evan Garber.
and we talk about the hottest topics in sports over the course of the past week. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about MLB news regarding the MLB and the MLBPA. Then we'll move on to the whole Juwan Howard and Michigan situation, because I said that's a topic I want to save for Friday when Evan comes back on the episodes. And then New York City vaccine mandate and obviously Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets, because in the coming weeks, with all the Harden Simmons trade, the Nets and Sixers, I feel like, are going to be a heavy team covered in these upcoming episodes. But before then, remember, we post at the start of the week on Monday, and then of course at the end of the week on Friday. And before we start again, before I hit record on this episode, it occurred to me once Evan told me that episode 43 never got posted on YouTube. I did not realize that I posted it as a private video instead of a public video. So that's the reason why it's published today technically, even though I put it up on Monday. Mistakenly a private video. That was a mistake on my end. But no, there's not 2 episodes per day. But it was up on Spotify and Apple for those of you wondering. But without further ado, let's get into the MLB news. I'm going to let Evan take the floor on this one.
So I'm just gonna keep it a little bit short here. I don't want to talk about everything, considering that we could have a deal by Monday, potentially. But if we're really, like, no way we're getting a deal by Monday. The sides do not seem close at all. Um, I'm honestly just really, really mad as a fan. This is not where we want to be. Obviously, we want a whole 162 games, but if we don't get a deal by Monday, that won't happen. And it's just really frustrating that, but that neither side is willing to take that big step in order to get a deal done by that time. Like it really seems like they don't even care to get 162 games in. Um, Today we had Walker Buehler tweeting out. He said that this isn't millionaires versus billionaires. This is workers versus owners. But honestly, that's just not it. It's millionaire workers versus billionaire owners, and the millionaire workers are trying to ask for more money from the billionaire owners. Like, sure, that makes sense logically. Like, the billionaires should pay the millionaires more. But if you really think about it, why do the players need more money? They do not need more money. They already get paid way more than the average person. So I don't really understand why they need more and more and more money.
That's a good point. And saying that it's workers versus owners, that's actually a pretty big statement by Walker Buehler. Because workers versus owners, you look back in history, all the labor union strikes, and that was workers against the owners. And to your point, players already get paid more than the average player. Even like the worst player on a team, a minimum contract. I don't know what that's worth in baseball, but even a minimum contract is probably more than the average person. Probably.
Yeah, I believe it's around 500K if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's still a good salary per year.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
what
it's
are the
just so
possible, like,
annoying.
if this deal does not happen and actually some signs point to it not happening, what could happen if this deal does not get reached?
So the deal definitely will get done at some point. I think that's safe to say. But if the deal does not get reached by Monday, um, games will be canceled. So, like, let's say the Giants are supposed. Let's say the season starts on May 7th. So the Giants they would be playing the Cardinals that day. So they would start from that day on the schedule and just keep going on. And then all previous games would be canceled. So that's how it would work. Um, Obviously, they really do want to play 162 games. At least that's what they say. But just the way things have been going so far, it does not look like it. Um, the only things we've really had agreed on so far are uh, the universal DH, which I'm honestly okay with. I'm really okay with. And then they're going to restructure the playoffs, but we just don't know how many teams yet. It's still being argued upon. And it's just so frustrating this week. They've met for around, I want to say like 20, 30 hours. And they've had very, very minimal progress. Obviously, the main thing holding them back right now is the collective bargaining tax. That's the main issue. And it hasn't even been proposed at all throughout this whole week and even before. So it's very frustrating to see that the main issue hasn't even been addressed. But I feel like once that main issue is addressed and once they sort of establish like some ground around that, then we'll be very, very, very close to a deal. But still, yeah, still right now, there's no chance we get a deal done by Monday. I feel like.
I mean, we'll definitely see what happens. So, that being said, those are our mostly his little thoughts on what could be the start of something big going on in the MLB. Obviously, for all our thoughts on this situation, because it's going to get larger possibly over the weekend into Monday by the time we post this episode. So be on the lookout for episode 45 coming out on Monday for our full reaction slash thoughts to, I mean, let's see what happens with this deal. But we move on to the Juwan Howard, Michigan situation. For those of you that don't know, Juwan Howard struck a Wisconsin assistant coach after a loss. It's because of the timeouts that were taken late in game after a large lead. I mean, like, you think about it in basketball, when a team has a large lead, you just dribble it out. But some players just shoot the basket anyways for no reason, and players and coaches take large offenses to that. So, I mean, here's another situation that are actually sparking debates if the handshake lines should be eliminated or it should be kept. Some coaches think it should be kept, some coaches think it should go. But now it caused a real stir, and Juwan Howard, it's clearly saddening that the coach prompted all this, because the players are supposed to follow the coach. And the coach is supposed to recruit these players, talk to their parents, to talk about the Michigan program. But now, him doing all this, getting suspended for pretty much the rest of the season, and I don't know where Michigan ranks in the March Madness rankings or whatever. I believe they're actually unranked this year. Don't quote me on that though. So, assuming they don't make March Madness, then I mean, pretty big that this happened, because Juwan Howard suspended the rest of the season. there were topics if he should get fired or not. I think firing him is a stretch. I mean, you could see that the timeouts were useless in that situation, and you're just trying to showboat on a team. So, I mean, I personally now think that the handshake lines could get eliminated from these games because when there's still a lot of energy in the player, mad about a loss, mad about the game ended, you're expecting these players and coaches to shake hands with one another when their energy is running high. So I've never had a problem with the handshake lines, but with this fight, I think you just eliminate it entirely. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, so I'll start to put the handshake line. I personally think it's just should be kept. I mean, you learn from a young age, yeah, that you learn from a young age that that's what you're supposed to do. Like in my games, we always high five the other team after another game, after the game. Sorry. So I feel like it's just sort of like a nice gesture to do. Uh, but yeah, we're in my stance on the situation. Um, I totally understand like why Juwan Howard was mad, but I personally think he took it way too far. He didn't have to get into that altercation. Um, but also, I'm kind of not against teams using like the last 15 seconds or whatever, the garbage time. I'm not against them using it to like practice or whatever. I mean, sure, it's against the unwritten rules, but I feel like teams should be able to use it as practice. Um, I just don't think that like you're supposed to play all 48 minutes. That's just how you learn from a young age. Play all 48 minutes. So I
Yeah.
feel like
And then, first of all, even then, you're mad about the timeouts, but you put your team in that position, or the team put themselves in that position that they're down and they're going to lose the game. So even if there were no timeouts, then it still would not have had any effect whatsoever on the game. And I mean, you put yourselves in that position. So I think after that, you're in no position to say or do anything other than, even if you're mad about what happened, just shake the hand, say good game, and just leave instead of making a whole scene about it. Right?
yeah, I totally agree. Like, going back to like should he be fired or not? I honestly think that the suspending is the right punishment. I personally feel like firing should only be like for more extreme stuff, like if you're in legal trouble, like you did an assault or something like that.
Yeah. So after that, I mean, let's see what transpires after this. If he's fired, if he's not fired. Hopefully he's not fired because Juwan Howard is a good guy, is a good coach. Lost to UCLA, I believe. Yeah, to UCLA. Because Gonzaga beat Houston. To UCLA in the March Madness. Obviously, UCLA lost on that Gonzaga shot by Jalen Suggs. That's always going to be a legendary March Madness game winner, but obviously lost to UCLA. Everyone's heartbroken for him because Juwan Howard's a good guy, and this is obviously not a reflection of his character. And I mean, so hopefully he's not fired. We'll see what happens. But honestly, with the way things have been going in general in this world, I wouldn't be surprised if he's fired, to be honest. I think the suspension is fine. And honestly, Juwan Howard fully expected this. There's no way he didn't expect getting suspended after what he caused. But I definitely do not think he should get fired. So that's the end of that topic. now we'll end off this episode by talking about New York City or New York, thing in general, removing or likely removing the vaccine mandate and mask mandate. I personally think the mask mandate is fine, but removing the vaccine mandate is honestly questionable because you have these anti vaxxers and anti maskers, and you're removing them both in a highly populated area. You're asking for COVID to happen. Just keep the mask, or you can remove the masks, but don't lift the vaccine mandate. And why this applies to Kyrie, Kyrie can now play in home. And when we look at the Brooklyn Nets, they are in a play-in situation. They just got smacked by the Celtics yesterday by 23. And they are 8th, 31-29. They are 3.5 games behind 6th spot to get out of the play-in. But there's firepower in the Raptors, Hornets, and Hawks to potentially upset them. I'm not saying it'll happen, but Ben Simmons hasn't played an NBA game in a while. So on paper, obviously this trade makes a lot of sense on the Nets' part because Seth Curry has been playing pretty well in a Nets uniform. Cam Thomas just recently hit a massive, pretty much game winner against the Knicks. So there's offensive firepower, but again, KD's trying to do too much, and he's paying for it with the injuries he continues to get. If Kyrie is vaccinated, that's already tons of pressure off the team because Kyrie is well conditioned and he can take over games when he's fully healthy and when he's participating. He missed pretty much half a season because the Nets didn't want him to be a part-time player. So that prompted conversations if he should get traded. But obviously Harden got traded instead. But without the vaccine, Kyrie can now play. I said that I'm not going to call Nets contenders until Kyrie gets vaccinated. Even though he's not vaccinated, the Nets could be contenders, but they're not the best in the East type contenders. I'd still choose Chicago, Miami, Philly, and Milwaukee, and maybe Cleveland over the Brooklyn Nets right now. So the Nets could be contenders, but you never know how Ben Simmons is going to play after being out of an NBA court for a while. What are your thoughts on New York City potentially lifting the vaccine mandate?
Yeah, so obviously from a basketball standpoint, this is really, really good. You get more competition in the East. Like honestly, if I was at the top of the East, like the 3, 4, 5 seed around there, I would be scared right now. You're likely gonna run into the Nets at some probably in the first round, maybe second round. So they're gonna be a really scary team in the playoffs. Obviously, any team with KD in it is really scary. Obviously, still have Kyrie and Ben Simmons. That team's gonna be scary. But I totally agree with you that I wouldn't say they're ahead of teams like the Bucks, Sixers, Nets, and whatever. Or sorry, not Nets. The Bucks, Sixers, and Cavs, and them. Um, but yeah, it'd also be interesting to see Harden's debut. Is it today or tomorrow?
Yep, today against the Timberwolves.
Today, yeah. Yeah, so that'd also be interesting to see how Harden and Embiid gel together. That'll definitely decide a good amount. If the Nets are actually championship contenders, because if that doesn't work well, then maybe that puts the Nets a step up and maybe has a better chance to win the title.
Yep, Thursday, March 10th is actually when Ben Simmons could potentially return against the Sixers in Philly. if he doesn't perform well that game, he is going to hear an earful from not only Philly fans other than Brooklyn Nets fans. So, I mean, Simmons has got to choose wisely what he wants, but man, apparently Kyrie Irving, this is a report. Kyrie Irving tried to recruit Anthony Davis to the Celtics before the two players reportedly had a falling out. That is a crazy
Huh.
report, actually. It was a league executive says that it was looking like Anthony Davis was going to Boston with Kyrie. That's what Kyrie wanted. And Boston would have had to work it out with New Orleans. But once Anthony made his decision of where he wanted to go, the Pelicans wouldn't have had much choice. But that's the way it was going. I think people assumed at first that Durant would stay with Golden State. So Kyrie was courting AD to join him in Boston. It was looking good, but then Anthony and Kyrie had a little bit of falling out for some reason. I think Kyrie fell more in love with KD as opposed to AD, and maybe he realized KD was possible. Now they're teammates in Brooklyn. I mean, imagine the Celtics right now if they kept Kyrie and added Anthony Davis, but Tatum obviously broke out, I think, without Kyrie. So I don't think that would have worked. But that's just a new report I stumbled upon right now.
I mean, on obviously, if they were to pull off that trade, it probably would have taken Jalen Brown or Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
I would assume Jason Tatum because he plays the forward rather than Jalen Brown who plays shooting guard, small forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, that team would be pretty scary. Obviously, that would be the three-headed monster instead of the three-headed monster in Brooklyn, or now the two and a half-headed monster, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But yeah, that team would be pretty scary, especially since Kyrie wouldn't have to get vaccinated. I would assume.
Yeah.
So yeah, they'd probably be the top of the East right now.
Exactly. But NBA is the NBA. Shocking things happen in the NBA. And with that, thanks for tuning in to episode 44. Remember, we post at the start of the week on Monday and at the end of the week on Friday. Have a great weekend and see you for episode 45.